Today I want to talk about some of the common mistakes that people are making when out in the field, and that's in relation to the draw and charging. Most common things that people have questions on. It's great that we're getting a lot of questions now prior to people going and doing something they think they might be able to do, or their friend said you can do this without any experience, any way, shape or form about the unit. So the first thing I want to mention about it, and it's in the instructions, and I cannot stress the importance of reading instructions, and most of the issues we'll get, in fact all of them are due to not reading instructions. You cannot jump start from a Nomad to a vehicle. Our partners are being asked can they make up leads so that if they have to jump start the vehicle they can do it from the Nomad. Under no circumstance can you jump start from the Nomad. There are products out there like the jump packs with high discharge ratings. Again, they're a different chemical and they're designed to be able to crank start the vehicle. But even those, if you do not follow the instructions, are notorious because people crank it 10 times more than they're supposed to be without resting it. They end up swelling up, chemical breakdown, and a lot of them catch fire. It is not an issue with the product. Okay, if you abuse any product, it's going to fail at some stage. It will fail. So that's not jump starting from a vehicle. Inverters running off the Nomad. Inverters can be run off the Nomad, but you have to understand what is available as an output. Maximum output of these is 20 amp across the whole unit, or 20 amp from the Anderson anytime, and then each of these ports are 10 amp each. But the maximum you can draw from the unit at any given time is 20 amp. 20 amp is 300 watt or less, just to be safe and to make it simple. If you ask me, can I run my 1500 watt microwave, my 1800 watt coffee machine, my 2800 watt induction oven, 1000 watt Ninja. Okay, if you took 1000 watt and divided by 12.6, just as a simple math, you're still going to be, upwards of sort of 80, 90 amp draw. These are maximum 20. So what you have to do is look at the appliance and work out how much amp it's going to draw. That's why we have an LED screen here, is to tell you how much amp's coming out. So if you put a 300 watt inverter in and you ran it to its max, you might find this comes up around the 20 mark, and then as long as you stay under 20, you're fine. So you need to understand, again, if you try and draw and keep on drawing 1000 watt out of say a 150 watt inverter, obviously something's going to fail. It's not the inverter's fault because you're trying to draw say 1000 watt out of 150 watt. This fails. It's not the product. They're not following the instructions or understanding the draw. So that's when you're using an inverter and understanding what available power you have to use. So they're not designed to run any of the really high-end AC products. So you wouldn't run your household, your fridge, your dishwasher that's 240. You wouldn't run them off the Nomad. So the other thing I want to talk about, that's as far as a draw goes. When we talk about charging, one of the most common mistakes people are making at the moment is they'll direct connect the alternator directly to the Nomad into the regulator input to start with or without a fuse. In both instances is not something to be done because the alternator can provide upwards of 50 amp, 60 amp, 70 amp and plus. And if it comes into the Nomad, which has a maximum 25 amp capacity, what do you think will happen? The unit will continue to shut down until the BMS decides it's going to give up, and it'll actually disconnect permanently. We'll get a call. We know that's what happens. It's had too much current going into the actual regulator input. It doesn't matter if it's got a fuse because the fluctuation in the current that's coming from the alternator, depending on what loads are on the vehicle, okay, the Nomad's not going to like it. You never connect a direct feed from the vehicle to the Nomad without a DC-DC. You always have a DC-DC to regulate the charge, less than 25 amp to the Nomad. It's not 25 and a bit, it's 25 and less. The ratings are exactly what the ratings are. Not a half a point more, it's always what it is. The next thing someone will do is take their direct feed from the vehicle and connect to the red and black poles because they'll assume that it's a regulator in here and it regulates any power. So they'll plug anything into it, assuming this regulator will take care of it all and it will charge it correctly. It has a rating of 8 to 32 volt, maximum 10 amp. It's 10 amp written on here. It's not 20 amp or 15 amp, it's 10 amp, okay? So connecting it directly to the vehicle, getting 50 amp, that MPPT is going to fail. We can smell it's failed. It'll disconnect permanently to the battery because the battery will just do that to protect itself. The only way to fix it is to replace the MPPT. We know straight away that's what's been done. It doesn't need to be done if you follow the instructions. It's a maximum of 10 amp, and this is designed to take an unregulated solar panel and then connect to the red and black poles. The next creative thing that we've got is a person who already has a DC-DC in the vehicle and decides that they'll connect it, the DC-DC they have, it could be AGM lead acid rated, connect to the red and black poles. So now you've gone from a regulator to a regulator, and everything gets confusing now for the poor old unit. So this might not charge fully charged, and it will have some really strange sort of charging numbers come up. And then what we'll do is simply take that off and direct connect it to here, as long as there's no more than 10 amp going in, and generally that fixes it. Or you may have created an imbalance, but unlikely, because the BMS will protect the unit. So that's talking about direct connecting from a vehicle. Don't do it. You've got to have a DC-DC to regulate it and protect the unit. And if you're going to run a solar panel of 200 watt or less, typically without a regulator, you're fine. If you have a solar panel with a regulator, so it has its own regulator sitting on the solar panel, you can do up to 25 amp through the regulated input. So that's not direct connecting it from the vehicle. The other thing you don't want to be doing is connecting your sticker socket to a vehicle and then trying to charge it to another sticker socket of a Nomad. So basically you've got two outputs. It doesn't say anywhere in the instructions to do that, but we're having people do that, or connecting to the sticker socket in the vehicle, connecting to the Anderson, or directly from the sticker socket connecting to the red and black poles. Again, the sticker socket could be rated 20 amp. It's not going to be regulated. It's going to go up and down depending on what's available as far as current goes through it, and it's going to draw as much as it can through here. So if I connect the sticker socket directly to the Nomad, and the Nomad is flat, it's going to take as much, current as it can get, and it can potentially melt down the sticker socket or sticker socket in the vehicle. So again, we haven't said in the instructions you can do that. It says absolutely don't do that. The only way you can charge is by using the DC-DC options to charge the Nomad. We did talk about before charging the Nomad from the pocket inverters. We don't have pocket inverters inside the unit because pocket inverters can fail, and when people see a 240 volt plug like this, they assume it's a house plug. Well, it is, but the house amount of wattage you can come out is a lot more than what this can. This is 150 watt, for example, but we would not put this inside the unit, because what if you plug a 1500 watt microwave into it? This is going to fail. If it's inside the unit, it's also a fire risk. Same reason we don't put AC/DCs or DC/DCs in the actual unit. So if I was to plug this in here and plug my AC/DC charger into the pocket inverter, I can charge a Nomad, and we've been through this before in a number of tutorials. You can absolutely charge it, no problems at all, because the AC/DC charger can't tell whether that 240 is from the pocket inverter or if it's coming from the house. It's an AC/DC charger. It's not that smart. So if I plug into the pocket inverter is putting out power. This is getting power. Okay, there's power coming out here, and I plug it into here, and the Nomad is not charging, then most likely that's shut down because you've tried to put too much current in or voltage in or some stage. Now, the other thing you could do to test that is you could plug in your solar panel with a regulator, plug it into the regulator input, and if that's still not taking charge, then you know that the BMS is most likely shut down. It could be a connective problem, but it's not likely that that's the issue. So what I will say is that if you plug it into here, and that's giving you 240, and it won't charge through there, and your solar panel with a regulator won't charge through there, there's no possible way that you could plug this into 240 from the house and then plug it in and then it's going to suddenly work. It's just not technically possible, because again, this can't determine the power coming from an inverter or from a house. That tells me that BMS has shut itself down to protect itself and probably needs to be rebooted. Again, if you want to kick the unit back in from an overcharge, the instructions are here and it tells you how to do it to get that to take on charge. And that's typically by drawing 1 amp or more, and then that will get the unit to reset. Okay, so the other thing that people are doing, not a lot of people doing, but have done, is they've taken the Y lead out of context, where we've said, look, what you can do is plug the Y lead into the output and you can run 2 fridges off it. Now, absolutely no problems at all. The output is an output, it's not an input. So if you run this in output, that's fine. Run 2 fridges, that's fine. What wouldn't you do? Run 1 fridge off this, put the charger in the other one. Okay, hasn't happened often, but people are doing it. Okay, I don't know where the creativity is coming from, but absolutely not. An output is only an output. It's not an option to make it an input. Absolutely no circumstance do it. In the instructions, it's very clear, never charge from the output. So what somebody will do is they'll say, well, the unit's at 12.4 on the screen, and there might be a 2-point difference between what's in there and what's in the output. At 12.4, we consider it fully charged. And that will be 98% or 100%. And at the output, you find it's 12.6. The screen might be 12.4. It might be 12.5. So what somebody will do is they'll take the AC/DC charger and plug it into the output, because they'll assume that it'll just give a little bit more of a boost and pump it up. Okay, this is not a safe thing to do, because what you're doing is bypassing the balancing, which would normally go through the regulated input. It's the same as any other type of lithium with a balancing lead. If you don't put the balancer in there, then you're running a risk of damaging the battery pack, okay, making it an imbalance, and then you're creating a problem, which we can tell that has been done to it. So you never ever charge, again, you never charge from the outputs. So again, when we talked about some of the common mistakes people are making, they're taking advice from people out in the field, and that's where it's coming from, is they're assuming that you can do things that people are using AGM, lead acid and gel, and they operate completely different than the lithium. So what I would suggest is absolutely read the instructions, follow the instructions, and most importantly, if you're going to do something you're not sure about, and this is great that we're getting a lot of it now, people are asking the question before they go and do something. And the product protects itself as much as it can, and in most scenarios we've been able to rectify any issue with the unit because someone has done the wrong thing by it. As long as people tell us what they've done, we pretty much can work around it. But it's all come about because people are not reading the instructions. So again, contact at nomadpdu.com.au if you've got any questions or you're thinking about doing something we haven't covered here. Pretty sure we covered most things of not to do, but if you still want to get creative, and then please send us an email telling us what you're thinking about doing, and then we'll advise you whether it's okay or not. So again, contact at nomadpdu.com.au, follow the instructions, and you'll get years and years of life out of it.